Your soul prior to incarnation chose your family, your upbringing, the karmas that were affected, and even on a deeper level, the past lives you were connected to. Is there going to be World War III? We've been living in World War III. We live in a state of war with ourselves. If I trust that everything in my life has happened for a reason, I also need to trust that for the world. You're waiting for the approval from God. You're waiting for the approval of your own highest self. In ancient Egypt, it was about dying, but actually it was about the deaths and rebirths we experience in this lifetime. Because if you're lucky, you will die several times in this lifetime. If there is a stage 6 of Dharma, it's beyond Dharma. Every single person on earth has the capacity, but also the birthright to be living in that. You don't even know how you ended up on this podcast. And that is your highest self that's guiding you on this path. As consciousness increases, we don't need to experience the level of pain, the level of rock bottom to have the awareness. We're moving from this Kali Yuga, this more era of darkness, into Satya Yuga, this era of truth. So the vibration of the planet is shifting. Older and older souls are coming through. Ultimately, I believe all of our purposes is the same. We're all here to... You were born into the microcosm of the macrocosm that you're here to heal in humanity. So your soul prior to incarnation chose your family, your upbringing, the karmas that were affected. And when I say the word karma, it's actions, it's decisions, it's traumas, it's gifts. It's all of the different factors that have gone into a person and over time, a lineage. And even on a deeper level, the past lives you were connected to, which are related to your soul, Atman, that's part of your consciousness that goes beyond even just your physical, literal lineage, but all of the essences that you have gathered across lifetimes, such as cultures you resonate with, historical time periods, archetypes. And we can have a whole conversation on past lives as well. So we've got past lives, we've got our ancestral lineage, we've got our childhood, we've got our society, we've got the time in the world that we were brought up, but also we're creating karma every single day with what's happening in the state of the world, with our decisions, with our impacts, the things we're saying yes to, the things that we're saying no to. And all of this comes together in who we are. And not just who we are, but how we are here to serve. Because ultimately, I believe all of our purposes is the same. We're all here to raise consciousness, but the unique lens that each of us is going to have is different, related to the unique vantage point that we have. So if you were born into a family of people suffering from addiction, you had a front row seat to know what that specific situation is like. You know the cues to know when dad has been drinking more and what happens after and all of the series of events that happen as a result. So you were born with a front row seat. So you have incredible empathy, compassion, nuance, awareness, and you see the broad spectrum of how it not just impacts a person, but a family unit. So that puts you in a position that you're able to heal and have awareness of this thing way more than someone else who's just reading it from a book. Now, every single one of us is born in one of these microcosms. You know, I was born in the microcosm of female suppression, of child marriage, of war. My family immigrated, left war and revolution in Iran. And those are unique. You know, I grew up hearing about war almost every single day because it's such a part of my family's story. So I was born with a unique vantage point of understanding that. And so when things happen in the world, it impacts me a little bit differently because it's not my first time hearing about it. And I can see how multi-layered these kind of situations are, that it's a lot more than reposting something on Instagram, right? So this is something that my soul had more awareness of. Your soul may know, you know, I'm curious, your soul's journey, someone else's may have learned about poverty mindset and the way that that impacts a family unit, and their dharma, their purpose may be the first person to, you know, break free from this matrix. So there are different matrices, thought forms, belief systems, patterns, karmas that have accumulated over time. And we right now are being born with the awareness of these patterns that likely we have known since childhood. I believe many of us who are on this more spiritual path chose families that we felt misunderstood. We felt like, how is no one else seeing the things that I'm seeing? Because that propelled us on the journey of understanding ourselves. If people around me did not understand me, then I need to radically question, who am I? And so that's going to take me on the journey of self-gnosis, which leads into all of the discoveries that happen afterwards. So we choose the contrast to create the expansion.
With karma, I've always wanted to know, how do we know if we're accruing karma through our actions or if we're unwinding karma? Like, I find that very difficult to discern, right?
Is
Like, how
there
do we ever?
ever I'm curious to you, is there ever a right or a wrong decision?
There are only consequences, is what comes to mind, actually. There are only consequences, there's only ripples. Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I may make a decision that creates more of something else and less of something else. You know, you have a friend that maybe the friendship is a bit stagnant and it's really no longer in alignment with who you are in this next chapter. So letting go of that friendship may have created the karma of creating space for a whole new set of friendships and community that more resonates with you now, but it also can create the karma of you're gonna bump into them and it's gonna be awkward and you're gonna miss them and, it's both and. So, simultaneously, we are letting go of karmas and creating new karmas. It's just the direction of the web shifts. Now, there are some actions that are, way more accumulating, right? So, if I do something that I know is not in alignment, that's hurting people, that, I'm like, "Oh, I know I'm not supposed to do this, but I just really wanna do it." I'm mostly just accumulating here. But and there are some things that are more just letting go, meditation. I'm not really accumulating anything. I'm really in the process of dismantling. So really a lot of forms of healing work are this, and this is why the more sadhana you do, the more karma you release. However, even the types of sadhana I do just create at the same time different threads, different directions. If I go on a kundalini meditation path, it's a specific direction. If I go on a plant medicine path, it's a specific direction. So I don't think there's really much that's like, unless you're just really sitting in stillness, that's you really not creating anything new. But even the micro thought that you have is still, it's like a ship. Even the tiniest little shift in the direction is going to set you off somewhere new. Now, at the same time, I don't believe the purpose of our life is to absolve ourselves from all karma, to become these clear slates with no preferences and no desires and no personalities. I don't believe that's the intention, because why would source consciousness put us in these human bodies on this contrast filled planet at this time if we are here to not be a part of it? I do believe our souls, and a lot of spiritual texts talk about how souls across the dimensions are actually like fighting for a time to be human right now, because you can't grow as a soul when there isn't contrast. So and come from these higher dimensions into the 3D, this physical dimension, because it's the only way a soul can evolve. However, sometimes I know you've probably felt this too. Is like, why am I here? Like, this place is ghetto. Like, what am I doing here? But you have to just remind yourself, I wanted this experience. That's why I'm here. I signed up for the 2025 global crazy catastrophe experience because there's some part of my soul that wanted now. And if it wanted now, there's a part of me that is meant to contribute to the fabric of what we are creating.
Yeah, what I'm hearing from your seat over there is also that there's this front row seat to what you're exposed to as war. And I mean, am I conflating it if I'm saying you're actually also witnessing then and here to sort of support people through that raging war within?
One of the greatest awarenesses I had when I sat with plant medicine San Pedro last year was that war consciousness lives within ourselves and lives within our families. That we point at the war outside. Right now, is there going to be World War III? We've been living in World War III, 10, 1,000 within ourselves. Just starting with, let's look at the family unit. How many times in a family growing up, or maybe it still happens, is taking sides? Me and your dad think this about you, your brother and you teaming up against this person, family feuds, especially if you're a brown male. This has been happening the whole time. Why is this happening? So like I saw these funny reels and it's like when you see the piece of land your family's been fighting for like 2 generations and it's like a piece of swamp, but it's that war consciousness because all of our lineage have experienced war at some point, whether it's not in this generation, it was our grandparents, it was our great grandparents. I mean, war has always been partition in India. Like there's always been periods of conflict in every single culture. And so for some cultures, it's just more fresh. And so when we see that outside of ourselves, we create that within ourselves. So we create that in our family. And then this creates this defense. I need to defend myself. I need you to see my side. I need you to agree with me. And so I'll find an ally to strengthen my point so you can see that we are right. And so this is war. And then it trickles into ourselves. How many of you guys right now while listening to this are judging yourself, wondering I'm falling behind, I should be doing something else. I'm not where I'm supposed to be in my life. I'm too fat. I'm too poor. I'm too this, I'm too that. How many of you are at war with yourself at this moment of time? We live in a state of war with ourselves, hating ourselves, dismantling ourselves, even trying to hack ourselves, as if we are a system that needs to be hacked, annihilated. So we are constantly in a state of war within ourselves. So of course, the state of war within myself will trickle into my relationships, will trickle into my family, will trickle into my, even parents' power over children. Wherever there is a quest for power, there can never be love. And we see this all the time. It's like what our modern day relationship advice is about. Be the black cat, not the golden retriever. I don't know if you've heard this because you're married, but it's like the thing that everyone's saying right now. It's like the black cat is the person that cares less. And you want to be the black cat, they say, because the black cat doesn't get hurt. Because if you care less, you're less likely to get heartbroken, less likely to get rejected. And so if the relationship doesn't work out, which you're kind of on break at all time, it's probably not going to work out. At least you're the person who wasn't really that into it. And we are training ourselves to become like this. Be the person who cares less. Be the person who loves less. Be the person who opens less. Because in that, you'll have power, self-preservation. But what are you really preserving yourself for if you're not opening yourself to the only experience that we're here to have as humans, which is to love?
These, because also I hear from you a little bit that, we're kind of been hijacked from our innate self as well, because I was listening to one of your podcasts recently and you gave a great example about abundance and you mentioned Frugal Franny. And I couldn't get over Frugal Franny has really stayed with me in terms of just these little wounds. And like, it's just a really nice example of like how these, can you share the story of little Frugal Franny and kind of how potentially these structures get put in place and then how they tend to propagate and they're not like our true innate self?
So within us, we think we're one person, but we have all these different consciousnesses that live inside of ourselves, and we can personify them. They can even be deities, but not all deities are great. So let's say there's an aspect of yourself that's always counting the dollars, that's always clenching when you get, extra avocado and you're like, oh God, that's extra $3. And that part of you was created, it was designed, it was a piece of you that has taught yourself that I need to be like this in order to survive. So let's say that frugal part of you, we can give it the name of Frugal Franny. Now, Frugal Franny is going through life looking at what's the price on this? Oh, I really want this, but I can't. And they're judging everyone who doesn't seem to be in that energy. Because what were they taught growing up? And I'm curious for those of you listening, what were they taught about money? Money doesn't grow on trees. More money, more problems. Oh, rich people, they have the least amount of morals. Oh, as soon as you make money, everyone in your family is going to be asking you for money, so it's better off not to. When the more money you make, the more taxes you have to pay. So better not to even make it. People like us, we're not like that. We're down to earth, humble people. And so we create this belief system actually that to not be frugal, Franny, is negative. It's abandoning our family. It's abandoning our beliefs. It's abandoning the truth of who we are. So frugal Franny becomes this preservation method. But the thing is, she's living in judgment all the time. She's overly consumed about every single little thing, and she doesn't realize that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. That instead of focusing on the greater ways that she can create abundance, she's so focused on micromanaging the little things. And that's creating a microscope for her of I'm going to focus on the $3 things rather than the $30,000 things that actually matter. And so she the ideas that were meant to come through for her consciousness of the real ways that she's here to create abundance for herself don't even make it in her mind because she's so focused on the little things. Now, I'm not saying, I think a lot of spiritual teachers will sometimes take it the opposite of like, so you got to just spend as much money as you want to tell the universe that you are abundant. No, I don't think it's that because there would be no such thing as debt. I don't think it's about now taking another archetype of being completely unconscious and spending money without looking at it because then we're not honoring that thing. When you honor someone, you look at it, you pay attention to it. So we want to be mindful. We want to be attentive. But we also don't want to hoard. We don't want to be like a clingy boyfriend who's not letting the money go anywhere. We want to allow it to flow and have its own energy. And also trusting that our highest level of abundance will only happen when we're living our Dharma. Because your Dharma is your soul's purpose. It's who you are and it's irreplaceable. There's only one person on earth who can speak, share, listen, create, think, connect the way that you can. There's only one person with your specific life story. There's only one specific person with your lineage. There's only one person who grew up with all the things that you have experienced in the order of it and in the way that you now express it. And so when you are living your dharma, you are one of one. So we look at economics, supply and demand. If the supply is infinite, then the demand is going to be very low. So if we're all regurgitating the exact same thing, then the supply is infinite. Then we wonder why. I see a lot of people, they'll go on social media and just kind of repost whatever's trending and they're like, oh, it didn't work for me. Well, it's because you weren't infusing it with your unique essence. Now, the more and more you infuse something with what makes you uniquely you, adding your nuance, adding your experience, adding your story, adding what makes you see the world in your own unique way. Now, the supply gets lower and lower and lower until it just becomes one. And now the demand is infinite because there is no one else who can do what you do it in the way that you do it. And I feel that this is actually the next step, in this time of AI. I'm sure you see it too, but so many posts on social media, I can just tell it's chat, and it loses its essence, it loses its life force. Yes, it could be better writing, great alliterations there. It's not this, but it's that, but
Yeah.
you can tell
The
it's
M
creating
dash. Yeah, the M dash. Yeah.
the M dash, the alliteration. Like we can see AI has its own dharma, it has its own language, it has its own essence that we are, again, this inner child within us that feels like I'm not good enough as I am. So let me give my thoughts and give my consciousness to this machine that will whitewash it. And then it loses its essence that maybe you did put your idea into it, but the way that it has AI-ified it with its own dharma and essence is actually propelling the dharma of AI. And so if we want to bring in our own unique frequencies, which is, by the way, why we chose to incarnate here, we need to continue, even if it takes more work, even if it's messy. I think in the future, it's going to be the most refreshing thing to read something that someone wrote that hasn't gone through chat. We're going to be like, oh, it's like reading like a poem, We're going to be like, whoa, they made a typo. Damn, like that is so real, And I feel we're already losing that, and it's what our world is so hungry for.
Can I tune back in with the contraction that Frugal Franny represents? Because there's a piece in there about how when she contracts, it forces other people to contract. That bit really got me as well, right? It's like as we open, we give other people permission to open, but also as we contract, like there's other contractions that happen around us. Can I offer you the space to speak to that, please?
Yeah, imagine you are in line for your coffee and you're scenario 1, you're running late. You have meetings to go to. The line is taking forever. You're getting really impatient. The barista seems to be getting everyone's order wrong. So you're getting kind of fueled up with that energy and you're kind of snappy. And then when it's time for you to order, you're like, I want the whatever. You say it so quickly, she gets it wrong, and you're more frustrated. And everyone in the line is feeling that energy. So it's this collective stress unit that is now creating it because it's all felt. Now, let's say scenario 2, one person decides, I'm going to pay for the person behind me. Just offer a piece of generosity there. And then that person, when it's their time to order, the barista's like, oh, the person already actually paid for your order. You're like, oh my God, you feel so lit up that you're smiling. You're kind to the barista. She does an amazing job, has an incredible day. She goes home and she tells her partner how beautiful the day was. And, they end up getting into such a happy relationship. And that leads to them getting engaged. And from them getting engaged, they raise their children in a more beautiful way. And it's like this beautiful trickle down effect from it could have just been one person paying for someone's coffee, not to mention all of the people in that line who maybe kept paying for the person behind them. So we have in any moment to make a decision of how we can shift the karma. We can create a new ripple, we can create a new pattern, and it just comes from us making a decision. I feel so often we feel like we need to hit rock bottom to make that decision. We need to go into such a contraction that we're like, okay, shit, there's no way for me to continue on this path. But we can just decide right now, I don't need to hit rock bottom in order for me to shift. Me just realizing I want to feel a different way is enough. And that creates the ripple effect for your family who's seeing that you're, creating in a different way, the way that it heals their view of what's possible for them. The way, they say in Native American proverb, when you heal for yourself, you're healing 7 generations before you and 7 generations after. So there is an energy, and maybe you've seen it when you've done healing work. I remember once I wrote a letter to my father of all the things that I wish I could have said to him. And it was very emotional. And I was crying. And I never sent him the letter. I didn't feel he had the capacity for it. But I noticed he just started to shift and how he would respond to me. And he just started to be so much more open and so much more loving. And I've noticed his shift so much. And again, not from him really doing any kind of work, but from the energy that me changing my vibration has on the force field towards him, because we are all connected telepathically. And so when we shift how we see people in our consciousness, we also shift the history of what happened. Healing your childhood does not mean going back, but it means looking at that experience from a new lens. You know, so much of the beginning of the healing journey is being honest about the ways that we've been hurt, the ways that we've been left out, really crying and grieving for the childhood that we wish we would have had. But I feel later on as we go, we start to really have compassion. We start to really have compassion for our parents, like doing the best that they could with the very limited resources at the time. Maybe they moved to a new country or had so many things going on. And I'm sure becoming a father was majorly that for you, that you're like, oh my God, like I take back all the things that I felt about
Just
my
a little.
family. Yeah.
Just a little.
And then that patterns how you saw your childhood. So again, it's
Big
like a
time.
car crash that happens. When I'm in the middle of the car crash, I'm in the collision. I'm in the rubber on the ground and the smell and the chaos and the honking, and I'm like, what the hell just happened? But as I get further away from it, or as I start to view it from higher and higher floors of the building, okay, the person on the fourth floor actually saw, no, the car crash wasn't actually because this car stopped, but there were 5 cars in front of it that actually stopped because he made a wrong turn and that caused this. The person from 10 floors can actually see, oh, well, it's because that traffic light up there wasn't actually working correctly. And the person from 20 floors up can see the whole system. So the further you, not further, but further you sometimes remove yourself from the problem, but also sometimes the higher you see things from a higher perspective, which is sometimes taking a walk and clearing your head, sometimes doing meditation, sometimes just giving the time and space it takes for something to come together, you start to look at the same situation from every different perspective. You start to look at it from yours, the villains, the perpetrators, the bystanders, all of the different people around it. And you start to put yourself in all these in different situations, and you realize there actually was no villain. There actually was no right or wrong. This combustion, this contraction was actually, in a way, divinely orchestrated by all of our souls who were involved in it, because we all got exactly what we needed from it.
Inspired souls, lumen beings, thank you so much to all of you that are subscribed to this podcast. Everything you see around here, guests like this come on the podcast because of your subscription to the channel. It is a total co-creation. Thank you so much for your love and support. And interestingly, at the time of this recording, looking at the back end, it's pretty surprising that actually only 20% of you that are actually watching this channel regularly are actually subscribed to this channel. So please do take a moment To all of you that aren't yet subscribed, as I'm saying the word subscribe, the button below is lighting up in the colors of the Inspired Evolution. Please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon, join the community, join the movement, spreading love, positivity, wisdom, and insights like this together across the planet. And in fact, many of you think you are subscribed but aren't yet subscribed, so please do check that button and subscribe to the podcast. Thank you so much for your loving support. What's coming to mind is a beautiful book behind me called The Difficulty of Being Good. It's a really beautiful read. I should probably get you a copy, but I don't know if you've read it. But he talks about all the different characters in the Mahabharata and how they end up in conflict, even though they just embody different positive traits. But when you see positive traits sort of bump up against each other, there is a little bit of friction that sparks off, and they can't reconcile and they struggle to understand. One of the pieces is, and I want to try and find my way into this conversation with you, because you talk about how consciousnesses are thought forms that the more we adhere to, the more fuel they basically end up with. I'm paraphrasing here and I'm sort of losing the ground on which I entered the conversation. So can you pick us up from here and explain what you mean by this?
So we often talk about goddesses, gods, deities, figures, Saraswati, the goddess of creativity, Kalima, the goddess of death and rebirth, Lakshmi, the goddess of abundance, Isis, the goddess of resurrection, Hathor, Mary Magdalene, Bridget. Are there are deities in every single pantheon. What are they? A deity is a personification of a thought form. And we are actually creating them with our every single thought. So when you have a thought about something, so maybe my thought is, everything was burned to the ground and it's for the best because I'm going to create something completely new. That thought that I I had it, but I'm probably not the only person that's had it. And so now every single person who's experienced their former life being burned to the ground and them just deciding, you know what, I'm going to create something completely new. We add to this thought form. We add to what becomes this belief system, this belief structure, this death and rebirth figure that then takes on a personification. Kalima in ancient Vedic, Sekhmet in Egyptian. Every single culture will have their own, this personification of death and rebirth. So we are creating these thought forms and, they can become these beautiful concepts that we can all look to in times of confusion and shifts in our lives, but we also can create ones that are not as serving, poverty consciousness. So that like frugal Franny energy that has likely been passed on intergenerationally. Maybe your parents, your grandparents were in the Holocaust. Maybe, your family was in the partition. There were periods of massive famine all around the world. And so somewhere created a thought form in one person, which trickled into all the people around it, which created these belief structures that this is just the way that life is. There's never enough, that there's not going to be enough for every single person. And so this creates these generations of it, and it just shifts how we act. So let's say we're all sharing a meal. Like, I'm sure you've experienced it before, that maybe it's like a family style meal with, some friends or family members. And one person just kind of gets a little greedy. They're like, oh, I really want to make sure I get extra sauce and this extra meat here. So they start grabbing more and more and more. And then you start to notice, oh, wow, well, I'm probably going to want seconds, even though I'm not really hungry for it now. So I'm going to start to get a little bit more than I need too. And the other person's like, oh, damn, well, there's not going to be enough by the time it comes to me. I mean, we see this in buffets all the time, right? And then they start to get a little bit more. And you're like, oh, let me be mindful of leaving like a tiny little piece of chicken for the next person. But like really you're trying to get it all for yourself. And so now everyone's in the scarcity mindset. And so this is another one of the ways that it trickles and trickles down, that one person's thought form creates a shared collective thought form, which creates the actual experience of this, there is not enough. So that thought form, people say your thoughts create your beliefs. It's not just in the psychic realm, it's very much in the physical. So let's say, again, the opposite happened and the person's like, oh, like, let me look at the line. Wow, there's a lot of people. Do I actually even really want this? Am I just taking this because it's in the buffet? Do I actually even want to really eat this? How many times we go through a buffet, we just take every single little thing, even though we probably would have never gotten that on our own, but we're like, you know what? I might as well because it's there and I might need it later. The hoarding mentality that we all do. But let's say someone did the opposite and they're like, I don't even need this. I actually realistically only eat like this much. And so I'm good. And then the next person feels that in their energy of the person just took this much. So I'm going to do that. And then by the end of it, there's so much leftover food and no one had to stuff themselves or even worse, waste food, which is most of the time what happens when we're in that consciousness. We hoard and hoard, we end up taking more than we need, and then we just end up wasting. And so again, every single one of us has the sovereignty to create these different forms of experience. And it could be something as simple of just shifting the dynamic. Maybe you and your friend always go 50-50 on everything. And that's great. And that makes sense. But maybe one day you decide to get both of your matchas. And then the next day they get both of your matchas. And then you're at the end of the day, you're paying the same amount, but, like, doesn't it feel so much better that sometimes your friend is getting you the matcha and sometimes you get to give your friend the matcha? It's like these little shifts of that that can bring us into abundance consciousness rather than scarcity consciousness.
Yeah, it's really interesting because also it feels like we're fueling these thought forms into and they generate their own propensities. But then there are also these archetypes, like you mentioned what you were saying earlier for me felt like the archetype of the wounded healer. And it was really profound because it's like actually prior to the conversation a little bit, I thought, we all embody somewhat of the archetype. But you're saying that, some people identify with certain archetypes more than others, but there was this real coming home to like, actually, we probably carry all of the archetypes within ourselves. And it's an option to sort of move forward and move. But where, like, is there a line between like archetype and thought form? Or actually, there is no line?
Well, here's the thing, that whatever your archetype is, you're also the opposite. The wounded healer is also the narcissist. The overgiving person is also the contracted person. So it's actually only when we make peace with the opposite of what we identify with that we can become true in who we are. So I, like many of us listening, have identified with being an empath. I feel we all are. We can feel things more, we have more sensitivity. Likely as children, we chose to incarnate. I don't know if it was your experience, but I know with a lot of healers I talked to, a parent that was more narcissistic. Why? Because we chose to see the contrast of what it's like when someone is disconnected to how people feel, so we can actually see the way that it impacts the family unit. And so we see that. My dad he's still alive, but again, and there's something I actually study about the lead during boomers generation of like something in their brain biology actually shifted to become more narcissistic. But it was also just that time and it was also just survival, right? So my dad was very much like his way, he's the best, his decision. And if you talks about something good in your life, he's like, "Oh, well, I did it like this." Or when I was a kid, I was like that, and I was this, and I was that. And he always really needed that because as a child, he didn't really have parents who even noticed him, let alone made him feel good. So he really wanted that validation. And so growing up, I would see that the way that his mood or especially bad mood impacted the entire family, and I never wanted to be that. And so I decided I'm gonna go the total opposite way. I never want to have my mood be a burden on the group. I never want to be the person who's taking up space. I never want to be the one whose lack of emotional regulation is impacting other people. So let me go the total opposite way of I'm going to make sure everyone in the group is okay, that everyone has what they need, that everyone likes me, that I'm super attuned, that I can start to feel, do they kind of start to not like me anymore? Let me get back in. Let me really feel into their energy so I can be the version of me that they like the most. And if I do that, then I'm liked. And if I'm liked and I'm loved, I'm safe. I belong. And so my trigger, and I'm curious for you guys, and here's a really good shadow work prompt that we can all do, because this is shadow work right here. Who's the person that annoys you the most? I don't think of that. Who is the person that annoys you the most? And if it's not a specific person, it's like this kind of person. So Amrit, if you feel called to share, who is the kind of person that annoys you the most?
Dang it, I know where this is going. There's this, yeah, ambition, an ambitious person that I know.
Mm. And what is it about their qualities that's just, like, annoying to you, feels out of touch?
The the lack of consideration, that they embody towards the outcomes that they're striving towards.
And someone who's inconsiderate, what are they?
I was just gonna say inconsiderate, not kind, lacking compassion, unaware,
How do
yeah.
we feel about those kind of people?
I feel judgment towards that person more so than how do I feel about it. I can feel my own judgment stirring actually, towards the other person. How do I feel about it? What's the judgments? Yeah, there's a little bit of anger behind the judgment. Yep.
Mhm. So you feel angry, these inconsiderate people, they don't care about anyone else. It's all about them. They don't realize the impact they make. And was there anyone ever in your life that was like that?
Yes.
Mm. And did you decide, maybe as a child, I never want to be that because I can see the way that impacts the people around them?
Yeah, 150%.
Mm. So you went the opposite.
Mm.
And so what did you become? I never want to be this inconsiderate person. So I'm going to become,
Hyper considerate.
and hyper considerate people, what are they like?
People pleasing.
People pleasing. What else? Good, bad.
Yeah, I associate them with good, I guess. Yeah.
So there's some good traits about them, right? They are attuned to other people. They're kind. They're
Mm.
compassionate. You know, a considerate person. That's what we all strive to be, right? But
Mm.
then the other side of it, what does that person who's overly like that become in their life?
Maybe a pushover.
Mhm.
And generally, the people pleasing wound leaves someone with yeah, they struggle with a sense of center and self identity over time. Like they're
Mhm.
not very robust in their being,
Mhm.
because they're consistently, I don't want to sound like this, but falling over themselves to serve others. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. Is there a part of your consciousness that thinks it's still better to do that than to be inconsiderate? Because at least it makes you a good person.
Yeah. When in doubt, service. Yep.
Mhm. And so you've created an identity around service. Are you in service to yourself?
That's a work in progress. That's always a work in progress. Yeah.
Mhm. So whenever there's something that annoys us about people, there's a trigger, there's a wound. So similarly to you, and I think a lot of people listening to this right now, when I think of the person that annoyed me, it was this girl that was in our kind of group of friends. And whenever we did a trip or did any kind of group activity, she would stir the pot. She would create drama and then insert herself as the savior of the drama. And she annoyed me so much because I thought she's so dramatic. When I really asked myself, what is it about her being dramatic that I don't like? It's that she is making the whole thing about her. We all came for a good time, and now she's making it about her. She's taking up so much space. I never want to be like that. So I'm going to be the opposite. I'm going to be super chill. I'm going to make sure I never create problems for a group. I'm going to go with the flow no matter what happens because how the group feels is more important than how I feel. And so my shadow work that I had to step into, that I'm inviting you and the listeners to step into, how can I be 1% more like the person that annoys me the most? Now, I'm not saying go 100% because they are a macro version of that thing. We're not trying to be that. But how can I actually be inspired by them 1%? So for you, what does that look like?
Yeah. Being more self interested at times. Yeah. being okay with the fact that everybody has more self-interest. Yeah.
Mhm. And what would that look like for you?
It's an interesting time of my life to ask me that, if I can share openly, because 'cause I've got young kids, and
Mhm.
so the service mentality permeates everything at home, uh, being a husband, being a father, work that I do. Um, so to be I'm pretty good at taking space for myself when I need it, but usually when I need it is, yeah, finding the balance in there in terms of, like, actually finding a space for myself, which is very difficult for a parent to do, to be honest, because kids, you need to water those plants every day.
Mhm. Have you ever felt when you were a child, someone may have been there with you, they may have been reading you the book, they may have been playing with you, but you could feel the energy. They didn't really wanna be there. Have you ever felt that?
Yeah, yeah, mm, sort of.
Maybe
Oh, no,
like,
actually, I do. Yeah, yeah,
mom
yeah, yeah, I've
mom's
had
not
an
paying
uncle. Yeah, yeah, no, no,
attention, yeah.
I've had an uncle that, yeah, didn't wanna hang. Yeah, 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 no, I do. I do remember that, yeah.
So we can feel kids are so freaking hyper intuitive, and so we can feel that as kids of, like, mom's reading me the book, but her mind's somewhere else. And so it's not about now the action is I need to choose myself, what's in my self-interest, because these are very, um, heavy words, right? There's a lot of even judgment I can feel. Self-interest sounds like war consciousness kind of. Be self-interested. So you of course, when you're hearing, "I need to choose self-interest," your heart is saying, "No. No, that's wrong. I'm a father, I need to be of service." But what if the energy, it wasn't even about changing any action, but it's the energy of even me being with my children is in my best interest. That while I'm here, I'm fully choosing to be here without that feeling of, "Oh, I'm doing this to be of service."
Hey there, Inspired Souls. Spirituality is not something we just talk about here at the Inspired Evolution. It's something we live and breathe with our entire beings. Whether it's in your career, your life, the way you lead in the world, or your relationships, it's at the heart of the way we believe life should be lived. And so if you're feeling out of alignment, or you can feel that there's something more, or you're feeling like you're not thriving in life, touch wood, the way that you ought to be, then we've got guidance to take you even deeper. You've got support from me one-on-one, and you've also got a like-minded, like-hearted community masterminding, master-hearting together through guidance together. And you don't have to take my word for it. This is how people all over the world have transformed through guidance.
Everything just kind of fell into place, and now I'm on a path that I actually believe in and I'm excited about because I feel like I'm becoming my best self.
Over those 2 years, I have done so much. I can't believe where I am now. I'm thrilled where I am now. Not only was he a coach, but he became a divine presence in my life.
You can show up to Amrit with all sorts of chaos in your life and you leave feeling completely centered with some direction that is going to get you results. It's just magic when you're in coaching with Amrit. You just flow with it all.
I feel that I have access and connection to somebody who is deeply entrenched in my development.
If you're thinking about it, just do it. You won't regret it.
So what are you waiting for? If you feel the call, then join me on a call. amritsandu.com/call. Link on screen now, and also at the top of the description in the show notes below. Join me in a call. Let's dive in deep to your path, onwards, upwards, and inwards from here. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a call. Go on, I'll see you there. Let's go deeper into that if you're open to it, because I find so much of, maybe it's like bhakti yoga, right? I find living into service actually, and maybe it's something I've convinced myself of, I'm open to that, is that the more I serve, the richer my experience of life. And I've just, programmed that in to the nth degree, to serve, to serve, to serve, to serve. Yeah, so I do feel like I am as present as I'm ever going to be in service, actually.
Mhm.
Um,
Absolutely, and service is such a huge part of the spiritual path and really the siddhi of why we're here, and there are vibrational differences of service. So there's the most obvious service, the service of being a parent. It's the most natural, innate human experience. And even within that, there's ways that we are of service that are like, oh my God, I so want to be here for this experience. And, and some things, and look, it's never going to be 100%, especially being a parent. But let's look at service maybe in the world. The missionaries. I'm gonna take the total opposite way. The Christian missionaries that went around the world were being of service. They genuinely believed, I am being of service. I am helping these barbaric people with these crazy practices find God. There is no greater thing that I could do right now. And so they were like on a mission. I need to convert people. I need to help them find the right way. And that created karma. That created ripple effects. The ripple effects of colonialism, which created ripple effects of war, which is a huge reason why we have the state of the world that we're in. But it started from being of service. There's this amazing book, and it's also a show now called Shantaram. Have you ever read it?
It is my favorite book.
So you love that book, and I love it as well. And in that, it's this question of the main character, and for those of you who haven't read it, he was like a convict in New Zealand who escaped, and he found his way to Bombay, India in the 80s. And this is a true story. And
I interviewed the guy, and you totally should too. Just going to chuck that in there.
I need to. So we can post that. And so essentially, he had some basic paramedic skills, and he saw that there were a lot of curable diseases that were happening in the slums. So he started to help. And then before long, they decided he's the doctor of the slum. He was not a doctor, and he did not have the resources to support them. So he starts dealing drugs. And so on one hand, he's dealing drugs. The slum needs more things. He goes higher and higher up the drug ranks. Now the drug ranks comes with, as you get higher and higher in ranks, human trafficking, arms, a lot of negative karma being created, but he's also of service. And so I share this because we can't just say, well, I'm of service, point blank, it's just all good. There is nuance to every single little thing of where it's coming from and all of the different effects. Now, again, these are macro ways, which are just easier for us to look at. But within ourselves, every single time that we want to be of service, let's say your friend is going through a time of need. You're helping the friend, you're listening to a friend. After a period of time, is it the highest service to your friend, to yourself? Sometimes the greatest service we can do is to actually let someone suffer. And that is a really hard pill for us to swallow, especially those of us whose identities have been around doing good, because we have seen the macro of someone who let everyone suffer. So we never want to let a single person suffer. But then we're actually depriving them from the experience of standing on their own feet, of cultivating the consciousness that is needed to get to the other side of this pattern. And so this is, I feel, the great conflict that happens in a spiritual person in the state of the world. It's like, I want to help. There are people suffering. There are war. There are famines. There are all these things. And yes, it's happening. And on a greater human experience, if I trust that everything in my life has happened for a reason, I also need to trust that for the world. And that is really an edgy thought. If it wasn't for the war that happened in Iran, I wouldn't be here. I'm a result of my mom escaping on foot from that war, meeting my dad in the United States. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that war. And so we don't know the full fabric of how anything unfolds when we're so focused just on that moment. That service, when it's coming from the heart, when it's coming from joy, when it's coming from Dharma, then yes, you are being guided for that service. And sometimes it's, talking to that person on the bus and you don't know how it changed their day. And so but you're divinely led. But when it comes from, an example that I gave on the solo cast that I did is we are right now in a time where we are aware of everything that's happening around the world. And the way that it is, it feels like there's never a break. There's Afghanistan, Iraq, and then Ukraine, and then Iran, Israel, and Gaza has been ongoing, and so many things happening. And it just feels like my nervous system doesn't even get a chance to like unwind from what just happened. And now all of a sudden there's this whole other conflict, which by the way, most of us know really nothing about. And so now we're like heartbroken because we're humans, we're compassionate. We see people being killed. Like, of course, we're going to respond, but we don't know what to do. And so imagine there is someone named Samantha, and she is an empath. She's kind, she's loving, she's naturally very attuned to children. Her brother had special needs, so she really was a caretaker for her brother, and she would come up with interesting ways to educate him. And she really got to understand how people with special needs actually have special superpowers. And she started to create this little system of a school that she could make one day. And it's going to revolutionize the way that special needs kids are being taught and really allow them to experience the superpowers of who they are. And she feels so in alignment. When she thinks about this, it's the number one thing that she knows she's here to create and cause for humanity. And because she's an empath, she goes on social media and she sees that this war is happening and these riots are happening and this deportation is happening and this famine is happening. And all of a sudden she's like, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. I can't believe this is going on. This is happening today. Like, how are people not talking about it? She's going down rabbit holes and she's reading the comments and, she's a good person. So she needs to know everything about this new situation that's happened. And she's a bit confused because everyone seems to be arguing, but because she's committed to being a good person, she's going to figure this out. And so she's actually in freeze because she doesn't want to say the wrong thing because she did that before. So she's not saying anything. She's actually stopped posting on social media. She stopped doing everything because she's trying to get to the bottom of the situation. And then another thing happens. And now she's like, oh my God, the world is so crazy. How do people even want to have kids these days? It's so nuts. And then the other thing happens. And slowly her freeze response turns into a depression. And she's afraid of doing anything because she's afraid of doing the wrong thing. And she feels, who am I in this crazy state of the world to be happy, to even make something? I need to be mourning. I need to be showing my fellow camaraderies that I'm also in pain. And so months and months go on that she is not creating, she is not sharing, she is becoming a shell of herself in the name of being a good person. And so Samantha's Dharma is gone. Her light is no longer. But worse than that, the hundreds or maybe thousands of special needs children who could have gone to her school, who could have been seen for the first time, the effects on the families who would have shifted their perspective and experience of raising these children, the effect on the world that would have caused, of seeing these children create beautiful solutions for world problems with their special vantage point. The actual way that she could have impacted the world is erased in her guise of being a good person. And this is 99% of humanity right now. I come from Iran. I don't want you guys to try to figure out the entire Iranian situation. I was raised in it and I don't know. So how do I expect you to when my own family can't agree? I want you to focus on your Dharma. I want you to focus on the thing that makes you come alive. I want you to focus on the thing that you can follow through with. Because any service is not a one and done. That's service actually to the self. To say, you know what, it's Thanksgiving, so I'm going to go to the homeless shelter and, give them some turkey to check off my doing good benchmark for this year and, then continue to reshare things I know nothing about on social media, thinking that I'm an activist. That is actually what's happening. And again, it's coming from a pure intention, but we're not actually creating the impact that our souls came on this planet to create when we are constantly jumping ship. Raising a child is a lifelong job, and that's one child. Imagine trying to create solutions for world problems that have been happening for thousands of years. We need a lot of people fully focused on that one thing. My best friend, she's Mexican. She's very into what's happening with ICE. I support her, but I know I'm never going to have the level of nuance and awareness and follow through that it really takes to make a shift in that problem. But based on my experiences of being from Iran and looking at this is the thing that I can focus on. And based on your experience, that doesn't need to be a countrywide thing. It could be the oceans, it can be the environment, it can be raising consciousness. By the way, I don't want everyone in the weeds. I have some friends that their greatest dharma is to hold the vibration in New Mexico or wherever they are, because we also need some people who are not so in the trenches, who are just holding specific frequencies for humanity. So it's like a ladder, and we're all in different planes. And so how do we know it's truly of service? When it's coming from the heart. Because when it's coming from the heart, we can keep doing it when it's hard, when your kids are yelling and crying. You want to keep being of service in those moments. And we need to be looking at our dharma in the same way. This is our this is our child, this is our gift, this is our contribution. And if you don't fucking love it that much, you're not really going to do anything about it.
I've got two questions fighting to get out at the same time. One of them is, how do we discover our Dharma? But the one that was preceding that was actually, you said this in a few different pockets that I was doing my research. You said the last thing our inner child wants is to be bad. Yeah, those are two very different questions, but maybe let's speak about the inner child piece and it not wanting to be bad. And maybe, I don't know if that opens up into our discovering our Dharma.
When we were kids, we would look at our parents and wait for that tap on the head of, you're doing good. You're a good boy. You're a good girl. You're doing right. Because that meant approval, that meant closeness, that meant safety. And we need that for our survival as children. But the thing is, we continue to go through life looking above us, waiting for someone to give us that tap on the head. You're doing it right. Yes, this is how it's meant to be done. Keep going this way. And as we get older, we look around and we're like, who's the person who's supposed to be tapping my head? Who am I doing this? Because those people don't know. And you realize you've been living your entire life waiting for the approval of someone that as you get older, you don't even know who that person is. You're waiting for the approval from God. You're waiting for the approval of your own highest self, your own inner compass to tell yourself, I don't know if I'm doing it right, but I'm doing what feels right now. Because the truth is, our compass is going to shift and it's going to evolve. And if there's one thing in life, it's that this too shall pass, good and bad. Every chapter, every season has a moment, even our lives. We walk up the stairs onto the stage, and then we're center stage and we're on a podcast and we're having the moment and we start to walk off, and the show must go on. The show must go on. So at any given point, you can just decide, well, this is what I'm doing right now. And you're never going to know all of the pieces of the puzzle until really, I believe, the moment that you pass, that it starts to all make sense. And I think a lot of us are trying to figure it all out while we're in the middle of the puzzle. It's like, oh, but the next 50 pieces haven't even unfolded yet. And so we just have to trust the next step. There was a phrase I kept saying to myself, and it's, trust the path, let it all unfold, just release the control. Trust the path, let it all unfold, just release the control. Trust the path, let it all unfold, just release the control. Say it with me. Trust the path, let it all unfold, just release the control.
Into the control.
And
Dude, I want to
that's
put
it.
some of your songs in the show notes below. But trust, surrender, trust, flow, surrender, let go. Is that the? Have I
Yes,
got the
that's
lyrics
another
right?
one.
Oh, dude, that's a badass song. I really, 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 yeah. One of the what I actually was hearing in the background of what you just said was this really important piece where I didn't realize, well, I do realize Inspired Evolution was the perfect name for me to show up for a podcast for, because it sort of ironed out, I'm Virgo, by the way, sort of just ironed out any Virgo perfectionism, because it's like, hey, we're all inspired, we're always evolving. And in what you just shared, I really heard this, not just show up messy, but actually what's worth showing up for, that it doesn't matter that you're showing up messy, because it's so important, like mess and all, just it's that important to show up behind.
Absolutely. Because what does mess even mean? What is not mess? Again, it's us thinking this certain way, this more maybe what we see as polish, but even that's a perspective. Because if you go on TikTok, what actually does the best on there are people in their cars and walking around and, like their cameras. And so that's actually considered polished there. So even questioning what we think is right is not even right. And so when we realize the mess is the polish and the polish is the mess, and all we are really here to be is true to ourselves in this current incarnation of who we are. So the aspect of you that's raw and just went through a heartbreak and is maybe more emotional than you normally are, but decides to start sharing anyways, is the perfect evolution of who you are meant to be in that moment of time. And the version of you that's maybe really integrated in it and can speak about it and not get emotional and can really see things from a higher vantage point is perfect for that evolution. And that's the deity for the people who are meant to reach it. Like, I remember after, my heartbreak and my divorce, and I was creating so much content, and I was like, well, I got to keep doing this because it's inspiring so many women, and I need to be there for them. And it's like, but you're shifting and you're evolving. And that concept of you will continue to live in the minds of the people who it's meant to inspire. But you can't beholden yourself to a previous version of you because it's of service. Because then you're not allowing yourself to grow. What version of us do we stop at then?
Hey there, Inspired Souls. Here's someone from our community on the Inspired Circle sharing about her experience on the inside.
Meeting with Gary Zukov was one of the most important moments of my life. There's a couple times where he was just talking us through something and it just hit. And I think it's because we shared the same space with him. Because you watch a lot of people online and it doesn't feel the same as when you're sharing space with somebody. Like that moment, that memory, that one little tick in time. It does feel very different once you have that kind of awakening and remembering. Different people are different stages of their awakening. So when I start talking in a certain way, it sounds kind of nutty. And so I can talk very freely among my circle members and feel that I'm heard and validated and welcomed. Everybody's been so nice and open and non-judgmental. We're all being brought together in some magical way. I just look forward to more connections and what we can do with it. I would say that if you're curious about joining Circle or you feel that there's a calling to a community of like-minded people, that you should click the link down below and join. And it's super easy and super friendly and very affordable. And I would definitely recommend it.
It's interesting because on our way forward, more and more people are actually coming. When I say online, I've actually been using that phrase to sort of say awaken. But in this instance, I literally mean online, onto social media platforms and stuff like that. But you called some elements out, specifically like shame, frequency, lack of sovereignty in certain elements that actually do show up in the social domain space. And then a little bit further, just what we were talking about before with thought forms and how we basically are charging up thought forms and consciousnesses, and then watching everybody's online persona places and all this sort of stuff. And those things are also getting touch wood charged up in just a callback to sovereignty for each person. I think there's a whole piece in there that we do need to be aware of when traversing these online landscapes.
We can even become beholden to those versions of ourselves that we have shown up as online. Those become thought forms,
Caricatures
personifications, caricatures.
Big time. Touch wood.
That then we feel, I have to stay true to that because people liked it. People subscribe to it. People want it. And this is the problem of this era of personal brand. Because if we looked at what a brand was before, Coca-Cola could have the same polar bear for 100+ years, and it has. And we're like, that's a great brand. It's consistent. It doesn't change. It just kind of, maybe upgrades the definition of the polar bear, but it's the same brand. And so that's what we know as brands, the unchanging aspect of it. If you're on a conscious journey, you're going to be changing a lot, especially how you interact with the world, because how you interact with the world is a reflection of what you have been processing within yourself. And we are here to grow. And a lot of people talk about in ancient Egypt, it was about dying, but actually it was about the deaths and rebirths we experience in this lifetime. Because if you're lucky, you will die several times in this lifetime. It's just how well can you die? And so it's important for us to allow that spaciousness of who we are online, again, is a momentary glimpse of the way that our consciousness has unfolded and is choosing to interact with the world at this specific time. And at any moment, I can change. At any moment, I could have an awareness, an idea, an insight, or the divine may give me one that completely redirects me. And all I can do is to be true to who I am at this moment. And that is the only way that the next gems that are waiting to come through me can actually come through. But if I go to a toy store and my hands are full of all of the toys that I was holding on to, how do I open up and receive what is next to come? And so in my song, Trust, Flow, Surrender, Let Go, that mantra is what I was telling myself in my divorce. But the hardest part of it is let go. It is so hard for us humans to let go. Because again, it's that accumulation. It's that I worked so hard to get here. I worked so hard to become this version of me, and now I can feel it letting go. But I don't want to have to go through the whole process again. But the thing is, when we don't let go, it gets heavier and heavier and heavier. And it's like holding on to the jug of water with your arms out. At first, it's fine. After 5 minutes, a little heavier, 10 minutes heavier, 30 minutes, your arm's just going to collapse and you're going to spill the water all over the place. Instead of just deciding, yeah, this cup was great. It was the perfect cup for me to hold. My hand's just a little bit shaky right now. It's not bad. But I can feel there's actually, if I give myself a break right now, I'm going to be able to hold a much bigger cup. And so sometimes it actually takes us literally breaking a pattern and having a period of the void to actually even come back to that thing with such a greater capacity. Because if I'm in the rink and I'm fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting, I'm going to get worn out. And then soon, my opponent will win. But if I take a break and I recharge, like lifting weights, you come back for that last rep, you're like, oh my God, that 8 kilos is actually pretty easy right now. And so we need to go into the void sometimes. We need to go into periods of, I don't know. Maybe right now the greatest mantra you can have instead of I am this, is I don't know. I don't know. Because that's actually the only real truth. The truth is we don't know. And so when we make space for not knowing, and it's like, okay, now I'm just curious to see. And now I will actually be able to see things in my periphery that I would not have been able to see before when I was so stuck on my direction. And so I talk about the 5 stages of Dharma in my book, Discover Your Dharma. And, the first stage is just the awareness of there has to be a greater purpose to my life. There has to be a reason why I'm here. And so those of you listening, I think you've gone here, at least in this conversation, and probably beforehand. But by the way, 90% of the people on Earth are still not there. 90% of people on Earth are still living for survival. And they've never once questioned, maybe there is a reason for this all. And that's okay. After you start to really wonder, could there be a purpose to life? Could there be a purpose to my life? What, if I'm here right now, why? You start to go to self-improvement. How do I become my best self? How do I become more healthy, more fit? How do I control my thoughts? You start reading self-help books, personal development, gaining confidence, all of the self-help spaces in stage 2. Now, this is very important because if I have digestive issues and I can't sleep and I'm super anxious and depressed, I'm not going to be able to go anywhere past that. I need to take care of my mind and body. And so we go on that journey. We start to prepare the vessel. But eventually, even then, still in stage 2, we start to realize, well, maybe I am not a mind and a body to improve, but rather a soul to know. And maybe there wasn't anything wrong with me per se, but rather it was, I just didn't know myself. So who am I? And maybe that path takes you on meditation, sitting with the stillness of the self. Maybe it takes you into astrology and human design and looking at these different systems and tools and finding glimpses of yourself in that. Maybe it takes you on the question of Dharma and looking at your purpose and your mission on this planet. Maybe it takes you to goddesses, the divine feminine embodiment. There's a cornucopia of different pathways that you can take. And so this is the path, stage 3 of spiritual awakening. And so spiritual awakening, we start to get so hungry to learn more and more about ourselves. And we start to realize, like, I was seeing the world through one lens and it's something so much more. It was a very exciting time, and it can also be very overwhelming because we're like, I need to awaken all the sheeple. Like, the people are still sleeping. Like, I need to wake them up. Like, I got to send them this YouTube video. They got to know. And so there can be this feeling of fear, of doom, because a lot of this has also been hijacked. It's been hijacked by, different groups that they'll take truth. Like, maybe you've seen some of these video series, they'll take truth and be like, question everything. It's not as it seems. It's like, yes. It's like 90% truth at the beginning, 10% a little bit like, Then as you get further along on it, it's like, and now Jesus is the only way and repent from your sins. And it's like, what? How did we end up here? So there are, because you're so open in spiritual awakening. When you're questioning everything, you're really questioning everything. And so you can lose touch with grounding. You can lose touch with reality because it's true. What is reality? Like I'm living here in Bali right now. And for so long, I was like, I can't live here. It's not reality. But actually now it is my reality. So everything is a paradox is what you really realize in the spiritual awakening. That we're creating our own realities and there is a collective reality, that anything can happen and our lives are results of all the actions that we have done. So it's not really any random thing happening, but rather a series of orders of things that have already happened. So it's like you start to see the intricacies of it all. And so spiritual awakening can be sometimes like disassociative at the same time. And we can lose ourselves in the quest of trying to figure it all out. So then eventually we reach this point that we realize I'm not going to figure it all out. I'm not going to be the master of every single system. I'm not going to heal every single past life lineage, but here are the things that I'm going to focus on. Here are the things that work for me. For one person, it could be their meditation. For someone else, it could be their breath work. For someone else, it could be their Dharma, their human design, goddess work, whatever the thing is. And you start to go into stage 4, Dharma development. And that's when you start to really gain mastery in one thing. Because these systems are there for a reason. They are sciences. And if we're just, like little sampling around, we never really go into the depths of one thing. And so Dharma development is to really focus and hone in on a specific craft, tool, system. And by the way, it doesn't even need to be spiritual. It could be gardening. It could be hiking. It could be whatever else that brings you closer to yourself. And so now in that development of the thing, which can take years, I think our egos don't like that because we all want to be the experts yesterday. But it really takes years because then we start to understand why things are the way that they are. And it's only until we can understand them, the tradition of it. I know a lot of us were total trailblazers. We also need to understand the traditions of things to actually truthfully be able to add our own expertise to it. Just like being of service. I can't be like, hey, Ukraine, here's what y'all should do. I don't know. There are people who are experts in it. Just like for me with Ayurveda, I've spent over 10 years studying Ayurveda and I'm still a student of it. So with that Dharma development, now from really diving into something, you start to see, well, here's how it actually relates to this other thing that I've learned about. Oh, and here's how it could actually be a little bit upgraded based on our lives today, which is probably radically different than 2000 plus years ago. Oh, here's how it can actually work for people in my walk of life, parents or single moms or whoever else. And you start to infuse your own essence to it. And you start to create something new, old and new. And that brings us into stage 5, Dharma embodiment. And that is when you are being one of one, when you are being you full time, when there is no difference between the outer and the inner you. When the version of you that's working in the same version of you that's with your friends and with your family, of course, different conversations, but you're not having to wear the mask anymore. And in Dharma development, all the areas of your life need to come into balance because if something is really holding you back, it's going to, as your Dharma gets truer and truer, it's going to be a bigger weight. your relationships, your home, your friendships, the little cracks that may not have been a problem anymore start to get really freaking big until eventually they crack because everything needs to be in alignment with truth because you are living the truth of who you are. And every single person on earth has the capacity, but also the birthright to be living in that. That is why we're here. And if you're listening to this episode this long in, 100% your soul is ready for it. You've chosen to listen to this as a reminder that I'm sure you already knew. But I want you to look at what stage am I in right now? Maybe I just started believing I have a Dharma, and now it's time for me to look at those digestive problems that I've had for a long time. Maybe I've been really focusing on my biohacking and my fitness and, my mindset, and now it's time for me to go deeper into my soul. Maybe I've been like deep in the YouTube rabbit holes for a really long time, trying to figure all the spiritual things out. It's time for me to really focus on one thing and see it through. Maybe I've been really head down, focusing on this thing. It's time for me to have the courage to share my own essence and infuse it within it. And by the way, it's a spiral. Because as we move into Dharma embodiment, there will be another seed that's planted, another aspect of our Dharma that comes through. But the thing is, once you've tasted the frequency of living your Dharma, now you know what it's like. It's not your first time going through the jungle with the machete when you're like, I don't even know if there's another side to this. It's like you've done it before. And so now oh, there's a new terrain. And then even when other contractions happen in your life, you're like, oh, I'm just in the shitty part of my memoir again. I guess there's a whole new teaching I'm meant to embody into and new level of the video game unlocked.
Yeah, I'm wondering about stage 6 Dharma refinement after Dharma embodiment. I'm sure there's, the embodiment is a huge piece that we move. Question I had for you actually today was, are we ever, thank you so much for being so gracious in your, thank you for the response. Are we ever actually divorced from our Dharma at any point?
No, because the not being on the path of your Dharma is the path to your Dharma, should you listen. So this is the difference between Dharma and Karma. So your Dharma is the truth of who you are. It's why your soul came to be. It's who you are in action. It's your unique signature. It's the unique ice cream flavor that you are. You were born with it. And so I think I talked about this on the last episode, but imagine your Dharma is at the end of the highway. You were born as a child. I'm sure you see your kids. They know who they are. I'm like this. I like that. I want this. I want that. You knew it. But then as you go through life, you look around you, again, am I doing it right? And you see people going off all these different exits. Your parents will be more proud of you if you do this. Oh, well, you'll make more money if you do that. Well, everyone from your town or your culture does this. Engineer or doctor, choose one. And so we start to get off these different exits, and then this energy called karma starts to respond. Tap, tap, tap. Something's wrong. Again, most of us are used to feeling anxious, so we drink more coffee, we numb more, and we keep going off that exit. It has to get a little louder. Punch, punch, punch. Something's out of alignment. I want you to listen. But again, we look around us. People are just living in a series of unfortunate events. And so we just keep going off that exit until it has to get so loud that there is no choice but for you to listen. And that's those rock bottom, on your knees moments. And your soul will manifest the level of rock bottom that you needed to listen. And so and I was definitely in a gnarly situation, that was the level I needed to make the shift. Because however long you've been going off the course of that karma, it's like, you don't know, you think that that's actually the path. And so it needed to be something so big, a health challenge, a betrayal, an accident, something so huge that it's like, this way is not working, and now I need to shift. And then when you make that shift, you start to notice synchronicities. You start to meet the right person at the right time. This is the right thing. You start to listen to the podcast. You don't even know how you ended up on this podcast. Seems like she's speaking right to me. And that is your highest self that's guiding you on this path, that's sending you these little breadcrumbs saying, yes, go in that direction. And then before you know it, you start living life with a different energy called Kriya. Boundless action by the universe. And that is when you are living in flow. That is when it feels like the universe has the steering wheel of life. And sometimes you're just taking a passenger seat and life is happening through you. And that is how life is meant to be lived. But we need to go through the karma to have the contrast, have the resistance, but also be given the flavor that we're going to come back into our Dharma with. Because wouldn't it be quite boring if it's like, I'm here to help people follow my dreams. I've always followed my dreams and I've never experienced not. It's like, okay, unrelatable. But we have to know what it's like to not. We have to know what it's like to not believe in order to actually be able to have solid opinions on why it's important to believe.
Inspired Soul Lumen beings, you're obviously enjoying this video, so please do give it a thumbs up and a like and join us in the conversation. What are you taking away from today's conversation? We'd love to hear from you in the comments below, and leave your questions that you would like me to ask in the future as well in the comments below, and be honored to ask them on your behalf. Is the career of your path and your Dharma, I mean, the question I've got underlying all of that is, how have you felt on this path for yourself? I mean, I'm sure some people would feel that you're quite young to be a spiritual teacher carrying the wisdom that you're carrying. Have you had to wear some of those projections, and how's your own sort of path through it all been?
Absolutely. So I believe that there's wisdom that inherently comes through us. I'm sure you've seen it in your children, and we're definitely seeing it so much in this next generation. I have a
Big
student at
time.
my school who's,
The-
yeah, like I have a student in one of my certifications. She's
Sure.
18, and I'm just like, what? Like, how? You know? And I feel I'm 34, and so I'm like, how do you know this stuff? And it's just, it's truth, and you can feel when someone is speaking truth. There's such a That's why with children, there's such a pure channel that you're like, how do you know this thing? But it's all of the accumulation of the past lives and the understandings that they've walked away with that have come into these souls. And by the way, every generation is ascending in consciousness. You know, so we're like worried about the next gen. No, they're worried about us. And by the way, as consciousness increases, we don't need to experience the level of pain, the level of rock bottom to have the awareness. Before our generation, older generation, it needed to be so freaking dense. It needed to be collision after collision after collision, and they still don't listen. But we're moving from this Kali Yuga, this more era of darkness, into Sakti Yuga, this era of truth. So the vibration of the planet is shifting. Older and older souls are coming through. They're coming in with awareness. They're coming through with ideas, like this fresh new energy that they're thinking about solutions for problems that we don't even know exist. So we can feel that universal truth, that universal wisdom. And simultaneously, there's something so innate and raw about the human experience that it's like when someone young is telling you something and you're like, wait till you go through your first divorce and see how you feel about that, you know? And it's like, there's that. And I feel, especially as life lifes you, you start to value that more. And that's why going to elders is so important, because they have had, they might not have that channeled wisdom, but they have this essence of like, yeah, I've been through some shit and I found out. And so we need both. But to think that elders are inherently more wise, I mean, go to the local nursing home, talk to your grandparents. Like, you'll see a lot of patriarchal beliefs, racist beliefs, things that are not really serving the new paradigm that we're in. But they might have incredible nuance and awareness about relationship and family and overcoming difficulties. So there's a teacher in every single person. There's a guru in every one. A lot of us old souls chose to karmically upfront a lot of our work. You know, I've gone through immense health challenges, my body going through perimenopause when I was 21. My family disowned me. I was broke living in India. I found out I was cheated on my entire marriage and had to go through a divorce and had gone through legal battle. I've gone through a lot of shit at my age. And I believe that my soul chose that to be able to speak with the awareness that I have today. Granted, in 10 years from now, I'm sure I'll be even more badass with that experience. And so there's always going to be the teacher in everyone. People who have gone through maybe similar pathways of not knowing their purpose and heartbreak and betrayal may find some wisdom in what I share. People who are in fatherhood and in this path of really questioning what is service and how do I create my own identity within that, and how do I create an inspired evolution that's open to change while being true to who I am, will find you as their teacher in that moment. And that's the beauty of everyone living their Dharma. Every single person carries codes for us.
Yeah, one of the pieces that really has shifted for me recently is you're just opening more and more further into astrology. Like there's always been this awareness of, like, but now like certified in Western astrology, Hellenic astrology, now Vedic astrology. Um, it's been really huge because astrology kind of is one of the first spiritual modalities that really gives you permission to be who you are rather than you need to be this way or you need to be that way or follow this or follow that. And it's like, actually, you're 2 quarters this, 1 quarter that, and 1 quarter this. Enjoy. You know? And it's like, it gives you just permission to just sort of be whatever sort of mixy sort of cocktail soup that you really are. And I think I just felt compelled to sort of inject that into this conversation with yourself, which is always focused on Dharma, which is, I think, is just so important, just because Dharma speaks to everyone's uniqueness, right? And I think even within spiritual paths, we can run the risk of becoming homogenized, even with the best of intentions.
Absolutely. And when we look at astrology, so if we look at um, in Western astrology, it would be the North Node. So the North Node is like what was like the northernmost point on the chart when we were born. That's related to our Dharma. So look at what sign is in your North Node. If you're looking at Vedic astrology, that's called Ketu. Now we can look at then what's in our South Node. What's the resistance that we've had? What did we come in with? Those are things that may be really easy for us, but we're here to actually step away from. If we look at our Chiron, that's the wounded healer. Those are often the energy that our wounds will come in. So yes, astrology, both Western and I really resonate with Vedic astrology because I've just found it's so intensely accurate, can give you a
It's,
lot of insight.
it's actually mapped to the astronomy. Yeah, it's interesting. I've been researching a lot around it and even just trying to reconcile the two. I found that quite a challenge for me for a while there, just kind of going, because the engineer in me is like, no, 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 no. You build the engine one way. Like there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And it's, yeah, just mapping Western astrology to the beginning of the seasons. But what I've come to realize is those seasons actually impact our personalities quite a bit. And, you can do a lot of personality assessment based on Western astrology, but forecasting and stuff like that, like Vedic astrology is absolutely the bees because it's mapped to what's actually going on in the heavens. The
Yes,
sidereal system.
exactly. So in ancient times, the Vedic culture was informing the Greek culture around astrology. And so they were showing them the different constellations and how things are set up. But one thing that was, I guess, not correctly translated was that the earth shifts in its axis a tiny bit every single year. Now, in the past around 2,000 years since the Greek system, which is what Western and tropical astrology is based on, Earth has shifted 26 degrees.
Which is a whole sign almost. 30
A
degrees
whole
is like a
almost a
whole
whole
sign.
sign. So 3/4 of us are actually going to be the sign before.
Mm.
And so unless you were born at like the very, very beginning of that sign, you are going to be the sign before. I have found it so much more accurate. I'm a Capricorn in Western astrology, and I feel like I can be a Capricorn in the Western world, but the truth of who I am, definitely Sagittarius. The other difference in Vedic astrology is you work a lot more with the rising sign. So oftentimes, like in India, when they say, "What's your sign?" they're talking about rising signs or moon signs. You don't really talk about your sun sign much. It's actually meant to be kept private.
Oh.
So, because your rising sign is how you're interacting with the world. So, I'm a Scorpio rising in Vedic, so it's like, and even our understandings of things in Vedic are a lot more. I feel nuanced. I feel like in Western, it's kind of this like pop culture astrology where it's like Scorpio is like your goth, and it's like, oh, in Vedic astrology, it's like spiritual transformation.
Mm.
So I really recommend for those of you who want to go down that pathway to work with a Vedic astrologer because it's not so simple, even as, there's dashas, because back in the day we lived for 120 years. So we were born in a specific cycle of these different time periods that were based on different planets. So if I was in my moon dasha, the time for me to have family and fertility and things like that. If I now move into my Mars dasha, okay, it's going to be a lot more active, more of maybe like a worldly energy. If I'm in my Saturn dasha, so and we don't all go through all of the same dashas because we don't live necessarily for 120 years. So, and then each dasha has a specific year that is ruling that. So it's really intricate and beautiful. And just for those of you who are spiritual nerds, I feel it just adds another layer. Now, I also want to say that it's not going to like say, this is what your Dharma is and do it exactly like that. It's essences, it's flavors, but then everyone can do with what they desire with it. And just like we're talking about, yes, we take on different karmas, but based on our spiritual work and development and our capacity to tune back into truth, these karmas impact us less. So actually, as we rise in consciousness, astrology impacts us less and less. And you can actually reach a point in your conscious development that the astrology does not impact you whatsoever. You become beyond it. And I would say if there is a stage 6 of Dharma, it's beyond Dharma. We're actually here to go beyond any label, beyond any dasha, dosha, anything. These are all tools for us understanding ourselves, so then eventually we transcend from ourselves.
Sahara Rose. Sister Bear. Thank you.
By the way, you
so
don't
much.
exist.
Let's just dissolve into that one for a moment. We had Neil Donna Walsh come on the podcast. We're at Conversations with God, and he said to me, he actually ran a radio show for before he started writing Conversations with God and became the spiritual teacher that he is. And he said one thing he learned from running a radio show was you always know like who's a pro, but they know when to end. and that's kind of stayed with me a little bit. It's like, I mean, how do you follow that up? You just don't. just. Sister,
well, never
it is
really
always
ends, does it?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here with us today. I mean, I sincerely look forward to these podcasts every time you jump on. And yeah, just the graciousness with, we were talking a little bit about this before the podcast, just the kinship and just the way you carry yourself and just, there's a lot in there. It's not just what you share, it's also how you share it. So it's your life's work and we get to revel in it in these conversations. So thank you so much for you. You've gone through we didn't get into that today because we've gone into that in the previous episode. I'll put a link to it right after this one. You've gone through a lot in your life and then there's been stuff happening since then as well. So just honoring you, Sister Bear, to always come back from the pressure to, gift us the pearl on the other side of it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for being an embodiment of the divine masculine who really listens. It's a really rare and unique quality that I see in you and that I felt in you in the last conversation. Like you're so there. And in this time that I feel, and there's a whole other conversation, there's the wounds of the masculine right now. It's so real. There's a lot of pain that has not been felt and a disassociation that happens as a result. So thank you by leading by example of just being so here with us, here with your community, listening, really asking the questions that I know are on people's minds that only someone who's very attentive and present will be able to really listen to what is being said between the lines. And I actually even heard you, is like what I'm really hearing you. And it's such a rare gift and superpower and such a massive part of your Dharma. And I hope that everyone watching this took just as much from your listening as they did from my speaking, because it was even more inspiring to me.
Such words, Sister Bear. You honor me no end. Thank you for your blessings. You inspired souls, living beings, you've made it through to the end of another really incredible episode. Thank you so much for your incredible love and support. It is such an honor to be your brother walking this path by your side. You've obviously enjoyed this video, so please do give it a thumbs up. It votes for content like this, spirituality, evolution, inspiration, to be spread around the internet further. So thank you so much in advance for doing so. And on the topic of thank yous, thank you all of you that have subscribed to this podcast. It is not possible without you guys. It's a total co-creation. So thank you so much to each and every single one of you that are subscribed to this podcast. And at the time of this recording, that's actually only 20% of you that are regularly watching this channel. 80% of you, we can see from the back end of the analytics, is actually unfortunately not yet subscribed. So many of you actually think you are subscribed, but you aren't actually subscribed. So please do take a moment. It really helps. So as I'm saying the word subscribe, the button below is lighting up in the colors of the Inspired Evolution. Please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon. Join the community, join the movement, spreading love, positivity, and wisdom like this around the planet together. Thank you so much in advance for your support. And as I mentioned, the community, let's go there. Inspired Evolution community, guests like this come on once a month where I step out of the way and you get to ask your questions directly of the guests of these incredible masters that come on and shine their light and wisdom into us on this podcast. And once a week, live and interactive, I'm running guided meditations. We have community offerings, community sharings and circles happening once a week as well. Breathwork, tarot, all sorts of cool stuff going on inside the circle. Astrology readings. It's a really, really buzzing, happening, fun place. So welcome yourself. Come on in. If you're looking for community, if you're feeling the call, if you're feeling a little bit alone, you don't need to. Please come on to the inside. We'd love to welcome you into the Inspired Evolution Circle. That's inspiredevolution.com/circle. There's a link in the description below. And now on screen to keep your inspirations flowing onwards, upwards, and inwards, the next episode here at the Inspired Evolution for you to continue your Inspired Evolution journey. So go on, take your pick and make your click. I'll see you in the next one. I'll see you there.